What's up, creeps? Welcome to the first episode of the Epic Film Guys podcast for 2025. We hope you all had a amazing, happy new year. It's time. It's that time.
Yeah, we're here.
Be ready. We're here. And what do we do? Our first episode of the new year every single year. I was about to say of 2025.
Well, we usually do a little recap for everyone about what our favorite horror movies of the last year were.
Absolutely, and that's what we're going to do today. Top 10 horror movies of 2024. I know we talked about this throughout the entire year on many different occasions. Whether we agreed or not on the subject was another matter, but how great of a year it was for horror. Ladies and gentlemen, our brother in arms, Epic Film Guy Jeremy, is working on a project currently, so he might be popping in and out in the next month or so. He just wanted to let you know he loves you, but we're going to be doing this one without him, and at the end of the show, we're going to read off his top 10 list of the year because we know how much of a great time he had at the movies, especially with Alien Romulus in 2024. But you know, just as a basic recap here, man, did you come around to how great it was for horror last year, or were you still like, nothing grabbed me that great?
I was thinking through this year. I think this was the year that I was probably the lone naysayer on the podcast a lot. I think there were a lot of movies that you and Jeremy really dug that I didn't. And I still think that 2023 was a better year for horror. 2024 had some good ones in there. And for a little preview for 2025, it looks like it has a lot more than 2025 has lined up. But no, I feel like the year didn't finish off strong enough for me. I think it was still overall kind of lackluster for horror.
Yeah, gotta fully disagree. I'm not saying that 2024 is miles ahead and above and beyond what we got in 2023, but I looked back at what we reviewed this year in comparison to the previous year, and I think it's just a tiny step ahead in terms of movies that will be, you know, wildly considered huge masterpieces or classics in the oncoming future. Who knows? I mean, a lot of movies had the word masterpiece connected to them this year, and that happens a lot. But this year, I think even more so. In particular, you know, a little movie with Demi Moore, and maybe a movie here with Naomi Scott, and a little movie with Nicolas Cage in it. We're going to be talking about maybe some of them on this countdown here, but a lot of movies and a lot of big marketing for horror movies this year. I think that is a large component in which these movies really thrived, is really good marketing and a lot of social media success really pushed them to the forefront, to the masses, and a lot of success at the box office. I mean, horror proved once again this year, Brady, that it is here to stay, and it is a massive juggernaut at the box office in terms of getting people out of their houses, in the theater seats, and, you know, they're at the movie theater.
Yeah, no, I mean, there's no denying that horror had a great year at the box office, and we love to see that. And regardless of how we felt about certain movies, or if we disagreed or agreed, whatever, you know, one thing we always agree on is that as long as horror is still successful, then it's a good year. So I'm very pleased with that. And some were surprising that they would be so successful, but, you know, still here for it.
Absolutely. If you look back to our first horror review of the year, I can tell you right now, spoiler alert, it will not be on my list. I don't know if you somehow managed to throw it on yours, but Night Swim from Blumhouse was a huge success at the box office for a January release, and that was one of the most...
Oh my god! I saw that. Yeah, and I was like, no fucking way. Not to be outdone by the follow-up episode to that, which was Founders Day.
True. Well,
oh my god,
I was a little bit more.
You were,
I was a little more kind to that one, for my own reasons. But Blumhouse is attempting to do the same thing this month with Lee Winnell's Wolfman, and I say Wolfman instead of The Wolfman because there is no "the" in the title, and he has wolf and man split into two words, I think intentionally so. And I'm hoping that one does well. We're going to be talking about that one on the show this month, so I actually have a lot of excitement even though not many people are talking about Wolfman right now, I hope that within the next few weeks or so prior to the release, that people start getting excited. I mean, it's a fucking Wolfman movie, but we're going to be talking about most anticipated on our next episode. So I think it's time to dig in our heels. Ladies and gentlemen, are you ready for this shit? Top 10 horror movies of 2024. And because you are the youngster of the show, we always start with you, Brady. So kick it off with your number 10.
So number 10 for me. Before we start, are you worried about anything that could be on my list? Like, is there anything that you're worried that I'm going to put on here that you're going to have to fight me about?
Not really.
Right,
no, cool. I mean, in my older age, post being 40 at this point, I no longer get as agitated or irritated or angry, if you will, by you or Jeremy's picks. Now, if there is something that I truly believe to be a giant, massive pile of shit, I will possibly poke you in the ribs for it. But I don't know, man. You've actually, and I'll say this on the show publicly, you've come into your own a lot in the last year or so in terms of being a film critic, movie reviewer, and I'm kind of proud of you in that sense, even though I don't always agree with you. Actually, P.S. I almost never agree with you anymore, but it's always makes for a great conversation. So we'll see what happens.
All right. So diving into it, my number 10 movie of 2024, horror movie, is M. Night Shyamalan's Trap.
Oh, wow. Okay. Top 10. All right. Maybe you were right in saying that.
I think, we have a whole episode on this that I think everybody should listen to because it was a really fun one. But that kind of sums up this movie for me. It was really fun. It was entertaining. Visually, it was great. Josh Hartnett is back. We all are happy for that. But I think for the most part of the film, he gives a really solid performance, a really grounded performance of this dad who's taking his daughter to this show, and then just so happens to be a serial killer they're on the manhunt for. It was a different type of Shyamalan twist that I think kind of was refreshing to see him do something a little different. Sure, he's always going to get hung up on the same things that always hang him up, which is why we had that huge discussion about, his bombs versus his successes. But Trap was a success for him. I think it grossed like $82 million on a $30 million budget. So I understand people's complaints with the movie, but for me, I can overlook a lot of them because it was such a fun ride, and it was unexpected. And so Trap has to be on my list.
Damn, you are correct. $82.7 million on a $30 million budget. Trap number 2, part 2. Here we come. I don't really know where they would go with that.
I really hope not.
Yeah. Funny thing you mentioned is grounded performance by Hartnett.
I said up to a certain point.
Okay. All right. I was gonna grab you there because I was like, I did really enjoy watching him in that movie, and I did really, really enjoy seeing him all sexy and shirtless at the end of the movie. But it is funny that Danielle turned to me and she's like, he's never had good hair. And I was like, that's not right. In Sin City, his hair was great. So
yeah, he went through like that Sin City, the lucky number 11. It was kind of interesting. But yeah, I agree. For the most part, he's had really rough hair.
So I can't say it's a great pick in my viewpoint, but I actually now, in retrospect, expected this one because you were pretty hot on that one. I feel like that was one of the biggest surprises of the year in terms of our reviews. Number 10 for me, 2 young missionaries become ensnared in a deadly game of cat and mouse when they knock on the door of the diabolical Mr. Reed. Trapped in his home, they must turn to their faith if they want to make it out alive. Talking about Heretic, directed by Scott Beck and Brian Woods, and starring Hugh Grant in not his first horror movie, ladies and gentlemen. Everyone wanted to be like, oh my God, it's his first. No, it's not his first time. It's just been like 30 plus years since he's been in one.
Lair of the White Worm? Is that what it was?
Yeah. Also featuring Sophie Thatcher as Sister Barnes and Chloe East as Sister Paxton, and Topher Grace popping in as Elder Kennedy, which must have been like...
Which I think was great because not to cut you up, but it's like, I talked to you afterwards too, but I looked at Faye in the theater, I was like, is that Topher Grace?
Dude, we talked about it in the review, I think, but Loy saw the movie with me, and it had been like the 3rd time they showed him, and he turns to me and he goes, is that Topher Grace? I go, yes, that's Venom from Spider-Man 3. Yes, that is Topher Grace.
You know that part in Fight Club where he's talking about splicing the porn into the movies and they're all like in the theater just kind of looking side-eyed at each other?
Oh my God.
That's what everybody did when Topher Grace came on.
Great seeing him. And I enjoyed this movie very much so. I didn't think it was going to affect me as much as it did. And I'm honestly, after watching it, didn't expect it to make my top 10. But after looking at everything throughout the year, it was one of the most unique and original things. And I just can't help but adore, number one, a movie with Sophie Thatcher in it, who's becoming one of my favorite people to watch in any genre. But Hugh Grant's performance in this movie really made it so special. You could just tell how much fun he was having in his eyes. Great time at the movies. It didn't break the mold or anything, but in terms of movies and what we saw in the genre, a standout. So Heretic is my number 10.
That's a great pick, man. Probably because number 9 for me is Heretic.
Oh my God, we're already doing a crossover.
And I think you summed it up perfectly. Whenever you get an A24 horror movie, there's always that part of you that's like, all right, well, this really isn't going to be a straight on horror, right? There's going to be something to it. There's going to be some subversion here, and I think this one does a really good job of from even just the trailer, but the first act of the movie sets it up, I think, to be something totally different. And go back and listen to a review for a better deep dive into this. But yeah, like you said, Hugh Grant is firing on all cylinders. He's kind of in his villain era now. He's hitting these seedy characters. I think I talked about on the episode this show he's on called The Undoing on HBO, which was really good. But he hits everything, and Sophie Thatcher, man, I'm super excited for the new season of Yellow Jackets coming up.
Can't wait.
She's been popping up, and I'm excited for her and Companion coming up too.
That's this month, isn't it?
Yeah, the end of the month. But yeah, it's great to watch this whole thing unfold into this cat and mouse game. And I think it's something that made me leave the theater still thinking about it and talking about it. And here we are on my list at number 9. So it was hard to not include it.
Great to hear it. Like I said, great year for horror, and it was one that stood out to me. It would not have been what it was without Hugh Grant, though. You could have cast any other actor, no matter how great. I think it just had to do with the it factor that he was this diabolical, insanely religious nutcase.
No, I mean, I think that he has that sort of sarcastic affability about him. Think the Bridget Jones era, all those late 90s, early 2000s rom-coms he was in. That can also, on the flip side of that, lend itself really well to the sinister character.
That's true when you think about it that way. Absolutely.
So that's my number 9.
So my number 9 is a movie that I don't remember you really liking that much, because it was like a lot of other movies that you actually love.
Oh, here we go.
When a group of teens take a locket from a collapsed fire tower in the woods, they unwittingly resurrect the rotting corpse of Johnny, a vengeful spirit spurred on by a horrific 60-year-old crime. And then, of course, the undead killer comes out, grabs a bunch of weapons, and in first-person view, slaughters them. I'm talking about In a Violent Nature, directed by Chris Nash. I had to put it on here, man. In terms of slashers, we didn't get that many standouts in 2024, but In a Violent Nature did something that no one else has done in over 15 years. They made a Friday the 13th movie, except for they just changed the name of the killer and gave him a different mask.
True. Yeah.
And they did it in a way that was at least compelling visually. I felt. I know this movie was either going to be for you or not be for you. I liken it a lot to Skinamarink last year, which did not work for me. And for some reason, I just really enjoyed this. First viewing, I watched a screener at home, and it wasn't as great. And then I had a date with your wife, because for some reason you couldn't make it, and she
was in DC working.
Yep, she screened In a Violent Nature for Psycho Cinema, and I was like, "Fuck it, I want to watch this movie on the big screen," and it played so well. That kill, I mean, the one everyone talks about on the cliff, the girl, him ripping the freaking hook through her body, and the people literally stood up and cheered and chanted and applauded a kill in a slasher movie. And that's enough for me to put it on my top 10 of the year. Audience participation in a positive way. Not people looking at their phones, not videoing the fucking screen or taking screenshots for TikTok. No, they're literally one with the movie and having a great time. I thought the kills were great. Third act, we talked about it on the show, wasn't the greatest. I thought the last 15 minutes really kind of slowed everything down and didn't ruin the movie, but it made it as less impactful than it could have been. But still, a blast of a time at the movies and one of the best slashers, if not the best slasher of the year. Probably. We'll have to see where the rest of my list goes. But that's my number 9, In a Violent Nature.
I was wondering where this was going to fall on your list. I actually will admit I thought it was going to be much higher up, closer to the top 5.
Okay.
For you. Spoiler alert: this is not on my list at all.
Didn't expect it to be.
Yes. I mean, I think that episode was fun. We had our friend Phil from Spook House Podcast on. And had a great time, but even, I could tell even he was surprised with some of the stuff I was saying. So I fully understand I'm in the minority here about this movie, but I'm still sticking to my guns. But all the points you make are completely true, man. Like, it's probably the best slasher that made it to screens because it's the only slasher that really made it to screens. But
not the only. No, hold on. We'll talk about another one later, probably.
But I wish it had worked for me a little more, and I wish that I could have enjoyed it. But one thing I did really enjoy about this year that leads into my number 8 is there was a ton of religious horror. It seems like that was the theme of the year. And for me, it could be religious trauma I have, whatever you have. But I was really struck by a couple of them, but for my number 8, it is a little film by Michael Mohan. The plot focuses on a young novice nun who's invited to reside at a picturesque Italian convent, but slowly realizes the terrifying secrets it harbors. You know what I'm talking about? Sydney Sweeney as a nun in Immaculate. I just loved the imagery here. I loved the setting. We talked about it in our review of this too. It takes place, it seems like the 70s, but then not at some points, almost kind of like a little bit of a It Follows vibe to it.
Yeah, like a hybrid.
Not really sure. Yeah. And although there were some issues with the Jurassic Park meets the Omen kind of thing, that I will admit is just stupid, silly.
That's why I liked it.
It all pays off in the end with that final scene of her, spoiler alert, fucking crushing that demon baby that she's forced to have with the stone.
Which you never see. Never see it.
But the primal scream leading into the credits, like, that is fucking insane. And like, when I think about why it resonates with me so much, and we can get into the modern day context of it too, with the Roe v. Wade stuff. And, I know we're not a political show, but when you're watching these things, that's always in your mind. And I think it was just a very powerful horror movie to speak on that idea of choice. And, her body's literally being used to carry a baby against her will. And this baby just happens to be the demonic Antichrist. She's great in it. It was nice to see her in a movie where they didn't overly sexualize her. Not that that's bad, but
not that over sexualizing Sydney Sweeney is a bad thing,
right? But it seems like you're just constantly inundated with her being, Sydney Sweeney's tits.
Yeah, it's a little overdone, man. It's this year in general. Right. I mean, people like paparazzi just like on boats that are like trying to video her in her house and shit. And I'm like, man, that's just like, come on, dude.
Exactly. And so with that, yeah, Immaculate had to be on my list. I'd originally started off a little higher up on the list, but I think it's found its sweet spot here at 8.
Great choice. You'll have to find out if it made my list or not. But number 8, nothing is what it seems when a twisted one-night stand spirals into a serial killer's vicious murder spree. JT Molyneux's Strange Darling, which came out of fucking nowhere.
Yeah.
Even though it is slightly more thriller than horror, this list I had to put anything on there that was even semi-horror adjacent.
Sure.
I mean, it's brutal. There's some gruesome kills in this thing, and the murders are as crazy as they get. This movie really knocked my socks off. We did not get that anywhere around here, if I remember correctly. I don't think we got it at work at my Alamo Draft House.
No, they didn't have it. You had to drive out to another state.
I drove to a Regal in Maryland to see it.
Yeah,
it's only like 30 minutes, whatever. I don't care. It's a nice Regal. No one ever goes there at night. So it was like a 9:30 screening, and loved the shit out of this movie. Just a great chase movie. It twists and turns, and because I'm not going to spoil anything for anyone, because I think there's still a large group of people that haven't had a chance to see it. Unfortunately, didn't do that well at the box office because it came squeezed in between Long Legs and some other stuff. So, that's what happens. But it made less than its budget, right under $4 million. Hopefully, it'll become a cult classic in its own way. But anything that Kyle Gallner is doing now, I mean, I'll watch any day of the week. He's just crushing it. He may or may not show up on another movie on my list later down the line here. But the expectations you have going into this movie, if you see the trailer just once, is not what it turns out to be when you actually watch it. And I just thought it was a great thriller, man. They don't make movies like this anymore. And I loved the opening. There's an amazing opening of Kyle Gallner's character chasing. So his character's name's the Demon, and he's chasing the lady, and he's on this pickup truck, and he's just shooting this shotgun at her, and it was just like an enthralling opening to a movie. Just knocks your socks off right off the bat, and cuts you in deep into this wild, twisted world. So that's where I got.
That's a good one. I mean, I saw that come in late, so I have one thing that I really liked about that movie too was how it tells the story, and I think it's like 6 chapters, but
yeah,
you're not getting them in order. So
absolutely not non-linear storytelling. Yeah,
after a certain point, you kind of can put 2 and 2 together. Like you see what's going to happen, and it doesn't make it any less enjoyable. It's a really interesting way to tell the story. And I'm glad that JT Molnar did it that way. And like you said, Kyle Gallner is fucking great in this. Yes, if you haven't seen it, definitely go check it out.
Absolutely.
One thing I wanted to ask you is, because I felt the same way. I was like, well, does this classify as a thriller or is this horror? And I even was talking to Faye about it because she loved it, and she considers it horror because of how much gore is in it. So I don't know if that's how you feel, like the dividing line when it comes down to thriller and horror.
There are moments of tension that go beyond thriller in my viewpoint, and that go into, if it goes to the territory of gruesome, almost like Seven. I rewatched Seven recently, and that walks that fine line in the middle of police procedural thriller and horror movie, because the imagery and the brutality is at the level that it is. So yeah. It's one of those, just put the fucking hyphen or the slash in between the genres, and there it is. Thriller, horror, whichever one it is more, I put first. Absolutely within that realm. So yeah, I see what you're saying. Yeah.
Makes sense. Well, great pick. So I guess we're moving into my number 7.
Absolutely, we're there.
So for my number 7, 6 downtrodden young space colonists encounter hostile creatures while scavenging a derelict space station. Number 7 for me is Fede Alvarez's Alien Romulus. This wasn't not going to make the list. I feel like I'm going to do this in injustice here, or a disservice, because Jeremy would probably,
if Jeremy were here,
jumping through the screen right now.
Absolutely.
But I admittedly, Jeremy's the Alien expert, the resident Alien super fan here, and Justin, I know you're a close second to that. And I love Alien, and I love Aliens, but a different era, a different generation, I'm going to chalk it up to. But that being said, what Fede Alvarez does with this is incredible. I mean, we talked about it in our episode, just the fucking palette color he chooses, right? It felt like a space movie, and you felt terror, and he made some decisions and took some chances on some choices that I think completely worked. And I think Keely Spaney, she's great in this. She's also coming up. She was in Civil War this year. She was in Mayor of Easttown a couple years ago on HBO. So, it's good to see her kind of her star rising. And it's just great. I think it's exactly what you would have wanted out of this. I'm glad it was a success. I'm very hopeful about where the franchise is going to go from here. But I know Jeremy is probably working on his project right now, and he just felt like a pang in his heart. So,
dude, he's watched that movie, I'm pretty sure, at least 20 times.
Yeah,
since it
and
came out.
I don't blame him. And look, we go through this every year. One of us usually may have something criminally low on the list compared to the others. And
Yeah,
that's just
I mean,
where we gotta go.
I would say it's slightly criminal, but it's still closer to the top 5 if you consider it in that way. If you didn't have it on the list, that's when we would have to behind the scenes, off the air, talk about maybe your resignation from Epic Film Guys.
Right.
But no,
Like,
in all
dude, are you okay?
seriousness, though, I mean, yeah, you including it at all is I understand. I get it. Totally.
I'm sure, people probably think like, oh, it's so easy to make a top 10. It's not. Once you start looking at it, and then just to get 10 movies on here, but then to order them in a way that, and having to think back, be like, oh man, when I saw this, and do I rewatch it?
True. Not only that, but I think even for me, right up until we click record, I'm still shuffling stuff. I'm still maybe thinking about one that needs to go up 2 slots, and how did it make me feel emotionally 2 months after it came out, and how often will I rewatch it in the future? Would I put the poster of the movie framed on my wall? Literally all of those things, because we take this shit seriously. Yeah, it's just a list. Yes, this is on a podcast, and we're doing it for you, our listeners, our followers, our fans to enjoy. But this list is personal, I think, for all of us. And every year I'll look back at my lists and be like, whoa, okay, cool. All right, maybe I need to rewatch that movie because I had that shit pretty high.
Yeah, right.
But
or you rewatch it, you're like, why was it so high on my list?
I've never done that. I never.
No, I haven't either.
I'm always right, Brady. So.
Oh, right.
No.
I wish we had a sound drop for the last episode we did where you're like, oh, Brady, you were right. Do you remember when I caught the fucking Batman 89 thing in that movie we watched? Yeah.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
It's just forever seared into my memory. Anyways, so Alien Romulus, my number 7. Super fucking happy with what Fede Alvarez gave to us with Alien.
Yeah, for sure. My number 7 is probably your number 1. A young American woman is sent to Rome to begin a life of service to the church, but encounters a darkness that causes her to question her faith. We're talking about Arkasha Stevenson's The First Omen, a supernatural horror film that came out, which is connected to the original The Omen, and it is a prequel, which no one thought we would ever get a prequel to the Omen. Number 1. Number 2, no one ever thought we would get a prequel to The Omen that would be not only good but fucking amazing. Expectations were so low for this movie, and it delivered on every front. And I'm saying this and pushing this hard because I know how much Brady really enjoyed this one. The interesting thing about this is The First Omen and Immaculate, which Brady just had on one of his picks previous, they came out within weeks of each other. And it was really interesting because the premise to each movie is so fucking similar that I'm actually shocked that they decided to release these movies as close in proximity to one another as they did. But they did. Yeah. And they were both successful. I think The First Omen only made 20 plus million over its budget, but a lot of people talked about it. And I do think that one of my favorite performances of the year still is Nell Tiger-Free as Margaret, who is the American sent to Rome to work at an orphanage before taking on the veil and becoming a nun. I think one of my favorite things about the movie, on top of her performance, is that it is so cinematic. The scope to this movie is huge. And it felt like a movie made in the 1970s. When you watch The Omen, or you could fill in the blank, whatever horror movies that you would watch, your favorite ones from the late 1970s, budgets were decent, and they were shot by real filmmakers. And I'm not saying that as a knock on modern filmmakers, but they were shot by seasoned veteran filmmakers, and everything felt big and grand. And them filming this on location in Rome just added that extra prestige to the film. And it gave it that heightened big feel to it, like a big studio horror movie. Even though, the budget was, $30 million. That's nothing to sniff at. It's not super cheap, but it's not overly expensive when you consider how much comic book movies are being made for today.
Well, also the same budget as Trap.
Absolutely. Yeah, and that made a lot more than this did. And I do believe that a lot of that has to do with the simple fact, like I said, that two movies very similar to one another came out so close to one another, and people had to pick and choose which one am I going to go see. And Sydney Sweeney is absolutely a brand right now. I think Immaculate, like you said, that was only $9 million, much cheaper. Only the movie takes place all in one location, so that makes sense. And it made $35 million, so a very modest success. Wasn't like a huge thing or anything, but this movie just really connected with me on every way. Sure, Brady, it has throwback kills to the original.
I didn't say anything this time.
I'm just saying.
I'm letting you do your review.
No. I think any reboot, prequel, remake, whatever you're doing that's going to homage an original movie in some way is going to harken back to at least a formula or a flavor or something from that. And the movie does ape a lot of stuff from The Omen, but I will say it on the show officially, I love The Omen. I think I like the first Omen slightly better. It may be sacrilege. Don't care. Don't care. I still love The Omen. I still think it's a brilliant classic movie. It takes nothing away from Richard Donner's classic movie.
Cut his mic. Play the music.
And don't even try to do that. He's rolling.
Get him out of here.
Shit. No. I think if Donner were still around, he would probably have actually really liked the first Omen for sure. But that's just my opinion.
Yeah.
So my number 7.
Wow, that was a lot. I gotta process this for a second. No, I mean
you'll be all right. I promise. You might need some
this.
therapy. You might need to tell your therapist. Talk about it this week. But
one thing that constantly came up for us as a group this year was just where is that line between homage and straight ripoff, and that was a lot of times where we got into arguments on the pod just about our different opinions of movies. And this was just another one for us where I get everything you're saying. I get why it worked for you. I get why it worked for a shit ton of people too who really loved it.
Pretty much everyone else except for you. No, just kidding.
That's right. That's not the first take that I've heard from somebody saying that it's better than the original. I think that is false. Just opinion wise, it's your opinion. So
I'm saying, well, okay. So I would say I prefer it slightly more, but I do think they're both equally well made movies. The one is in terms of character stuff, they're different. And who our main character is.
Trying to back out of it now because
you
felt Richard Donner's hand come up and grab your ankle.
Well, listen, the man made Superman. I can't piss him off. It's one of the greatest movies ever made. Okay, and the Goonies and Lethal Weapon. All right, I'm stopped.
I get what you're saying. It didn't work for me, and if you want to hear why it didn't work for me, you guys can go listen to that episode too because it was a fun one.
Yeah, every single movie on my list, at least, and I'm sure on your list, we've reviewed on the show. So if you want to listen to deep dives on that, we have all that in our archives.
If we can move along to my number 6, we're getting close to the top.
No,
5.
I was hoping we could make this an entire episode, a second episode on the
start.
First Omen.
Just stop right here. So actually, we wanted to do First Omen take 2.
No, feel free.
Number 6 for me is a gothic tale of obsession between a haunted young woman and the terrifying vampire infatuated with her, causing untold horror. Untold horror. I cannot fucking talk today. These cold medicine I'm on.
Well, I was going to say, you're sober as fuck, too. Damn, are we like weird when we're sober?
Untold horror in its wake. I'm talking about Robert Eggers' Nosferatu.
I thought you were talking about Salem's Lot, your most anticipated movie of the year.
This may or may not be one of 2 vampire movies on my list. Who can tell? I guess you're gonna have to listen.
Oh shit.
But I mean, this we never got to do a full deep dive of this. Justin, you and I went and saw this early with Loy Sauce, and we both came into that theater, feeling like it's a good movie, but there's something that just wasn't pushing it to be great, which is why it's not in my top 5. And everything that works in it works really well, and I still don't know that I can articulate exactly what it is outside of the when you're taking an adaptation of something that's been done in movie form and book form, you're constantly attaching different things to it. But this tale of obsession, when you think of obsession, it just wasn't fully there between the characters that it should be, right? So this Nosferatu yearning and longing, it's cool. His voice is great. Skarsgård does a great physical performance. I heard somebody the other day say that, I really wish that they hadn't put him in so much makeup because I wanted to see a physical performance. And I was like, well, I felt like what he gave was a physical performance.
Oh my God.
Physical isn't just how you move.
Did they see the movie in the close-ups? There's almost there's so little makeup on him except for the mustache. and the
Yeah.
hair on his head and stuff. They held back on the makeup. Motherfucker, can you see? Do you need glasses? LASIK works too, by the way.
But I think Lily Rose Depp still just doesn't work for me. I think she gives a solid performance as Ellen, but there's just something about it that was missing. I thought that Nicholas Hoult was incredible in that first act. I mean, he's really good throughout the whole movie, but that first act where he's really taking the audience by the hand and he's the surrogate, like you said, for us all watching it, being like, oh my God, this dude is walking into an awful fucking situation. Skarsgård, I've already said that a lot as Orlok.
Willem Dafoe, man, come on, gotta give him
Willem
some
Dafoe
props.
is fucking great, and even Aaron Taylor Johnson is great in it, and the
Did you hear-
cinematography is great.
Did you hear the news today? I mean, we're recording this on the weekend. That Bill Skarsgård actually revealed that he was initially cast as Thomas Hutter, and Mads Mikkelsen was going to play Nosferatu, Count Orlok.
I did hear that.
Yeah. Can you imagine that movie?
I love Mads Mikkelsen, but I think that they got it right with Skarsgård.
Yeah, they made the right choice there. Absolutely.
I love Mads and Hannibal as Hannibal Lecter. I think he is probably the best version of Hannibal we get. But I don't know that he would have worked as Orlok for me.
Yeah, sure.
But that is insane to think that you could have had Skarsgård as Thomas.
Yeah, I think.
But then,
yeah.
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I in retrospect, now I've seen the film twice, and you'll obviously hear me bring it up probably in a little bit here.
Sure.
Spoiler alert! But no, for real. I mean, I can't imagine anyone else in that role. I mean, I think everything about that movie is surrounded by his performance. It's just like it's him in the middle. He's the centerpiece, and everything else around him is just like window dressing.
Yeah, and I mean, everything is good for this. Like, the tagline is incredible. Succumb to the darkness. I think the cinematography, Eggers, this is where he really shines. Like, sure, he can craft a story. He can show you a tale, but the cinematography. I was talking to a friend about their rankings of Eggers movies after this one came out, and they weren't bad mouthing The Witch, but they were like, The Witch is kind of low for me because it's a slow burn that doesn't really pay off. And I was like, well, it's a slow burn, but like also like that's when you realize that he knew what the fuck he was doing. Like he's not only telling you a horror tale, he's showing it to you, and he's taking the time to pick these shots that are perfectly married to the story that's unfolding.
Yeah.
And sure, it's a little bit of a not a drag, but it's a little bit of a process to get to that. But it's so worth it. Like when I first saw The Witch, I was like, that is one of the most beautiful movies I've ever seen.
It's such an old school way of making horror movies, old school sensibility. He puts you in a trance and he pulls you in. And if you connect with it, you'll connect with it until the end. And if you don't, you don't. I think you could say the same thing about any of his movies. So I see some people saying Nosferatu didn't work for them, that people claiming it to be a masterpiece, it's all hyperbole. I don't actually prescribe to that. I think that you'll either connect with his movies or you won't. I think same could be said of Stanley Kubrick. There's a lot of filmmakers where you have to really delve yourself into it, just dive right the fuck in. And if you don't, then you're not going to be in the action. You're not going to feel it,
Yeah, and I think on top of the cinematography, the score for Nosferatu is my favorite score of the year, like hands down.
Absolutely.
It sticks with you, and I think that's what really for me the beauty of how the movie looked definitely is trance-like, but the score is just so disarming. And I think it all fucking works, but what doesn't make it great is going back to Lily Rose Depp. I know, we disagree on this too. And maybe it's not even so much her fault. Maybe it's how she's written. I don't know that past being possessed, she was really given anything to work with.
Yeah.
And maybe that's the point of it that I can't get past. But if there's this obsession with Count Orlok and Ellen have been linked, for years at this point, and it's he's her affliction and an appetite, all this great dialogue, all this stuff, but all that you get from her is this possession, which, to be fair, is a great physical performance, but that's all her character is. And so at the end, where there's this final spoiler alert, meeting between the two, and she saves the world by letting him devour her to make him, wait out past the sunrise. It felt like there wasn't enough to hold on to or grab on and latch me into it, because I was like, well, I haven't gotten anything from you. So I think because of that, it doesn't make it a great movie, and that it slips just out of my top 5, but still phenomenal movie. Number 6, Nosferatu.
Yeah, no, I get it. I get it. My number 6, probably the most talked about horror movie of 2024. FBI agent Lee Harker is assigned to an unsolved serial killer case that takes an unexpected turn. Revealing evidence of the occult, Harker discovers a personal connection to the killer known as Longlegs and must stop before he strikes again. Yes, I think a lot of people are like, Justin, what the fuck? It's not top 5. You literally said in the review it'll probably be your top number 1 of the year, and it'll be a lot of difficulty to remove that. And things happen, movies happen, and I watched it 3 times and I still think it's a fantastic film.
Mm-hmm.
$10 million budget, Brady, $127 fucking million. This movie was huge in 2024, and I bought the movie. I'll watch it again. I think that it is the closest thing to a Seven or a Zodiac or a Silence of the Lambs that we've received in a long time in terms of straight up film. And it knocked my socks off when I first saw it. I think Nicolas Cage's performance is one for the ages. Michael Monroe, I've loved her since It Follows. I love her in everything. Yeah. Brilliant performance. Alicia Witt also. Urban Legend, baby. Love
underrated performance.
Yeah, yep. Underrated performance. Great flick. Really enjoyed it.
Great pick. I mean, this was one that you and I were definitely super stoked for this year. And I am surprised that it's that low on your list. But I get it. And like you said, it's the closest we'll get to 7 again, I think. So great pick, man. Like I can't fault you for that one.
Yeah, I think again, when I first saw it, it was before a bunch of other movies I saw that came later that are on my list. So,
sure, right. That's how this works.
I was like, well, it's going to be hard to dethrone this. But I also always leave room in the back of my head, like, there's always a possibility. It was right in the middle of the summer. There was, the whole rest of the year to go. Like I said, I think the film is brilliant. I really loved what Oz Perkins did with this. And I still think it is, it'd be hard to not include this movie on a top 10 horror list because it really does stand out in its uniqueness. And I will also say this in terms of that conversation we had about Strange Darling, this is another film that walks that fine line between thriller and horror because it is at its core a police procedural. And, I recently rewatched 7 on 4K. Warner Brothers sent out a early test disc of that for me to check out. Fucking brilliant transfer, by the way. But that movie plays very similarly to 7. And so I consider that movie thriller horror. So same thing with Longlegs.
Yeah.
But it is scary. It's scary. It's spooky. So horror, it definitely is in its own way. And Longlegs, man, the image of Nicolas Cage's Longlegs will forever be ingrained in my brain. It's just that image.
Jarring.
When you first actually saw, I love how they hit him throughout the movie. When you finally see him, and Lee Harker finally comes face to face with him as an adult in the interrogation room, chilling shit, man. Like absolutely had my back filled with goosebumps. It's cinema. Longlegs is cinema. So number 6, baby, Longlegs.
Ooh, and we're in top 5.
We're in top 5, ladies and gentlemen.
All right, so
take a drink.
Let's take a drink, take a sip, take a break. Let me ask you this real quick. Now that we're through our back 5, how do you feel about it?
Pretty damn good, actually. As I'm sipping my C4 grape popsicle energy drink here, as we are recording in the middle of the day.
Yep.
But yeah, I'm feeling great, actually. I mean, yeah, the best is yet to come, though.
I mean, that's usually how top 10s work. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, all right, here we are. BluBrry's number 5. The 5th best horror movie of 2024 is set in 1980s Hollywood. We have a familiar character named Maxine Minx setting out for fame and stardom, and she's being targeted by a mysterious killer. That's right. Talked about Maxine, fucking Ty West's third movie in this trilogy. Fucking great cast, great setting, great soundtrack. I'll admit, when I first saw this, I was like, I don't know that this worked for me. But I've seen it about 4 times since then. And
4
I
times?
honestly,
Jesus Christ!
it's on HBO Max, man. I can watch it whenever I want.
I thought you were gonna be like, I'm an actual cinephile and I bought it.
Well, no. I'm an actual cinephile because I have a Letterboxd. Sorry, Corey. And
Letterboxd is stupid.
Letterboxd sucks. But getting back to the review,
Burn it.
I think each viewing of this one has made me feel stronger and stronger about it. Like, it's fun. Like, and I think when you get into the character arc of Maxine, we were never going to have something that felt final for her. Nothing was
Sure.
ever going to feel enough. But this is a fitting ending to her. Like, she gets her stardom. Like, she removes her trauma, confronts it, gets rid of the killer, and then, gets to go on being herself. And part of the ending, on the last time I watched it, I was like, man, she's fucking selfish, but that's how she's always been. And like, that's the beauty of this, is that she is still the same character that we meet in X, just much more headstrong, much more independent in herself and kind of on her own footing. And then the cast is great. I mean, Elizabeth Debicki, Moses Sumney, Michelle Monaghan, Halsey. Halsey, I'm going to leave off that because that fucking accent is terrible, and she was like top billing, and she was in it for like 5
Yeah,
minutes.
I really, that confused the shit out of me why she was top billing. Like every trailer, I was like, dude, you're in the movie for like 2 seconds.
And Lily Collins, Giancarlo Esposito, Kevin fucking Bacon, man.
He made that movie for me.
My employer is a very powerful man.
From that trailer, dude. Every single time I saw that trailer, Mark, my employer is a very powerful man.
He made the movie. But one standout from this too, man, is it's not a kill. Not that the kills weren't great in that, but the fucking ball crushing with the heel where she's about to get mugged, the maiming. Like, I was not expecting that out of this movie at all. Like, I was expecting some gore, some kills. But when I remember sitting there in the theater, dude. We went to DC for it, and she fucking stomps on his nad and it splits, and we were like, oh.
You said nad.
Like, one of the most visceral reactions in 2024's movie going experience for me.
For sure.
So with that, number 5 is Maxine.
Yeah. I'm happy that it's on your list. I'm glad that you watched it more than once. I, on the other hand, felt it was probably one of the biggest letdowns for me over the last couple years. I love Pearl. Pearl is probably one of my favorite movies ever, like literally ever. And I loved X as well. We reviewed both of those movies.
Yep.
And
I'll give it to you.
Maxine, tailor-made for me, like a Brian De Palma-esque Giallo throwback. And it had lots of things that I really enjoyed, and we talked about it on the show when we reviewed it. I do want to revisit it. I've thought about it a lot. The third act is really what didn't work for me at all.
Sure.
But it has lots to enjoy. Ty West is great at nailing a period. If watch House of the Devil, you already know that. Any of his movies so far, he is really intricate in terms of capturing an aura and a feeling of a time period, not only just in that period, but how those movies felt that were made during that period. And for that, the score was great. Amazing soundtrack, obviously. Like, he knows his shit. And Mia Goth is brilliant in the film. So,
Yep.
Yeah, I get it. And Kevin Bacon, though. Kevin Bacon, seriously, he's the MVP of Maxine. Absolutely. So, great pick. My number 5, I would have never expected this movie to ever come close to a top 10 list for me. Sky Riley is an international superstar about to embark on a sold-out concert tour, but an encounter with a drug-dealing friend, Lucas, who is a current holder of a smile curse, throws her already turbulent life into a free fall. Talking about Smile 2, Naomi Scott, directed by Parker Finn. I mildly liked the first Smile. I enjoyed it. I thought it was good. I wasn't blown away by it or anything like that. I thought Parker Finn did a very solid job of that movie. But Smile 2 absolutely passed the film in terms of quality, character work, scares, suspense, tension, and gore. Holy shit.
Interesting.
I loved Smile 2. I loved the concept of basically what they were, I knew this was the concept before I read that it was the concept, but what would happen if Lady Gaga got the smile curse?
Right.
And Naomi Scott is just fucking fantastic in this role. One of the best performances of the entire year. What she has to do in the movie, not only in terms of portraying a performer, which she is, she's a great vocalist. The songs she wrote and recorded all herself for the film. They're all solid. They're all solid songs. I've listened to a bunch of them. There's the soundtrack you can find on Spotify and Apple Music. Who knew that the girl that was in the Power Rangers reboot from 2017, and she played Jasmine in Aladdin as well, would become this powerhouse actor in this movie. I really loved her here. I thought she was fantastic. And back to Kyle Gallner, man. He's only in the opening scene of the movie, but there is a one shot that opens this movie where he's trying to remove himself of the smile curse, and he tries to pass it off to a bunch of low life drug dealers. How impressive that opening was. And I won't spoil it for anyone if they haven't seen the movie, but I'll say the way the title pops up on the screen is the purest horror opening of the year. Just brilliant shit.
Yeah, I'm really, really happy for you that this made your list.
Thanks, man. I really
to borrow from you.
Oh no. Yeah, it's great.
I watched it. I was not a huge fan of the first one. I tried to watch it a couple times to maybe think like, oh, maybe I wasn't, getting it at the right time of day or whatever. And it just didn't really work for me. And then I heard a lot of good things about the second one. A lot of people were telling me, hey, I wasn't super hot on the first one. I really liked the second one too. And I watched it, and it still doesn't do it for me. Performance, sure, I get what you're saying. And that opening shot is beautiful. But yeah, the
movie goes fucking bonkers, man. The movie builds probably better than any other horror movie of the year in terms of upping the ante continuously and making shit crazier and crazier until the end of the movie is just the most bonkers visual. I feel
like you said, at the beginning of this little review was that it would be like, what if Lady Gaga got the smile curse?
Yeah.
And after the first movie, there is that thought of, okay, well, how do you up the ante in the next one? So like, kudos to them for going after something. It just didn't work for me. But I'm glad it worked for you. I'm glad it made your list. Maybe Smile 3 will wrap me into it.
Who knows? I don't know, man. I mean, again, our listeners already know this, and you know this. I have a checklist when it comes to specific genre films. Does it do A, B, and C, and D? And if it does those things, then I'm satisfied. If it doesn't do those things or doesn't do them well, then I'm not. And especially if there's not a huge expectation going in, then it makes it work even better. And I try to view each movie the same way. I try to go in with the same level of expectation, which can be difficult. I mean, it really can be, especially like the next few movies on my list, which Jeremy can attest to as well. Especially if you waited 15 years, 10 years, 30 plus years for a sequel.
I wonder which one.
Yeah. But that is my number 5, Smile 2.
Nice. Good pick, man. Number 4 for me is a Irish horror film written and directed by Damien McCarthy, and it follows a blind medium and curio shopkeeper who is still grieving the death of her twin sister a year prior, when a wooden mannequin from her collection becomes crucial to her quest to uncover the truth about her sister's murder. I'm talking about Oddity.
God bless you. God bless you for putting this on your list.
Dude, what a fucking... You talk about how Smile 2, you did not expect that to come anywhere near a top 5 and top 10. Oddity, when it first came out, was relatively unknown, not talked about.
It came out right after Longlegs, I believe.
Yep, and right. I had seen McCarthy's other film, Caveat, and I liked it enough, but it wasn't anything that was like, I need to keep fucking watching this. And so I went into Oddity one night. It was actually thunderstorming out, I remember, and we watched it, and the fucking jump scares that I get from this movie, man. Like, I was not prepared for it, and I wasn't prepared to be that scared by this movie, like to the point where I had to turn lights on going in and out of different rooms in the house
Like,
because I was
I can
I
relate.
was
I
like,
can relate.
what? And we have some creepy ass shit in our house. Like, we have mannequins, we have dolls. And when that wooden doll mannequin thing is just sitting at the table, and every scene you have it in the frame, it's slightly moved or it's doing something else. Like, that's a huge fucking fear anywhere for anyone, right? And I think there was a little bit of I guess, for lack of better terms, blue balls at the end for me. Like, I wanted a little
Sure.
more out of whatever happened, but the twist is great. Finding out, what happened to the sister, like how she actually died, who's involved, and this thing being like this harbinger of death, was just a really surprising and incredible film. So for me, it's Oddity at number 4.
I gotta say, I'm super happy you included it. It was a sleeper movie this year. I think deserved to be talked about a lot more than it was. I went and saw it. I think it was that same theater that I saw Strange Darling in, because the AMC here in Winchester was playing it, but I couldn't make the time. So I was like, fuck it. Told Danielle, we're going to go to like a 9:30 showing of this thing on like a weeknight or whatever. Went, was scared shitless. The movie absolutely has, Brady, the best jump scares of the entire year out of any movie. And some of the best suspense and atmosphere, for sure. In terms of story and plot, it's as paper thin as it gets, probably. But character work is very solid. Performances are decent. And like I said, it just makes you feel like terrified inside, which is exactly what it's supposed to do. So it was very effective in that way. Great pick, dude.
Thanks, man.
Yeah. So my number 4 has already been talked about. And when Jeremy listens to this, he might get mad at me for how low it is. But Alien Romulus by Fede Alvarez. It needs no further introduction, as you already mentioned the synopsis earlier.
Jeremy is punching fucking holes in his walls right now.
Why is it not number 1?
Right.
But it's still top 5, and it shifted around a little bit. I saw it, I think, 4 times so far. And thank you to Disney for actually inviting us to come host an event for this. In IMAX, we got to give away prizes and hats and did a big introduction. I know it was a big deal for Jeremy because it was his most anticipated movie of the year, so we had to mention that. Great event. It was pretty much packed full in that IMAX at Tyson's Corner, Virginia.
Yep.
And it played so well.
It was a fun night.
Played so well. It was great to have the whole EFG team there, and just a great night. But the movie, what can I say that hasn't been said? We did 2 episodes on it, a spoiler free and a full spoiler. It brought the Alien franchise back to its roots. It felt like a great marriage of what Alien and Aliens were that worked so well for so many fans. Slapped them together and added in some stuff that we haven't seen before that felt very influenced by the Alien Isolation game. And like I said, we're going to do our best to. Jeremy's the guy, so I'm bummed that he isn't here to talk about this one. But like I said, we have 2 full reviews. I felt like it was a great return to form for the franchise. It was scary. It had suspense. There was so many practical sets and practical effects. Sure, they brought back to life a dead actor using CGI and motion capture. I don't care. It didn't, when I first saw it, it was a little jarring for the first few seconds. And then I was like, okay, with that shit, much like, yeah, exactly. Much like what we've seen in other movies, the Star Wars franchise, if you will, you either buy into it and let it go to the side and you continue on, or you don't. And for me, that stuff usually isn't a deal breaker. I'm like, okay, they decided to do this. As long as it's not too egregious, I'm like, okay, fine. I'll get past it if I dislike it. And that's the case here. The movie delivered for me on almost every single front. Great fucking score by Benjamin Wallfish.
Yep.
Amazing action sequences. Xenomorph heaven, man. I can't really say anything more than that. It was just a great time at the movies. Both exciting and scary. And that's what you want out of an Alien movie. And finally someone did it. And it was not Ridley Scott. Sorry, Alien Covenant fans. That movie did not. This is the movie the Alien Covenant should have been, I think, in my opinion. Just saying.
I get it. I mean, hey, I again find a lot of enjoyment in Alien Covenant, but I can separate the two and understand that it is not a great movie. It is not the movie everybody
Listen,
deserved.
I like to throw Prometheus on with the sound off and just look at it too. That doesn't mean it's a great movie, but there's
You do
lots
that
to enjoy.
naked in your bedroom.
All
Yep.
seriousness. Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Look at
You
all those
actually you sit up
blues.
there and you model it like him. You're just like walking like him.
Yeah, dude.
Those hues of
Absolutely.
blue.
But
No, great pick, dude. I mean,
yeah.
it's. I don't think Jeremy would be quite. Jeremy would probably be still more upset about where it fell on my list. That yours could skate by being at number 4.
Yeah. Listen, I'll just say this to our listeners. A day didn't go by for quite a few months where he didn't mention Alien Romulus to me. So that's
I think his poor wife, man. He was probably like waking up shouting it in his sleep, like, "Alien Romulus is the best movie of 2024."
honey, my name's not Alien Romulus.
He keeps calling me Xenomorph. Oh man, well, great pick, man.
Thanks, man. We're on to top 3. Holy shit, dude.
I know. Oh man. All right, number 3 for me. Justin, I know you're gonna give me shit for this one. It's October 31st, 1977. Jack Delroy hosts a syndicated talk show, Night Owls, that has long been a trusted companion to the insomniacs around the country. And a year after his death, or the death of his wife, ratings have plummeted. And desperate to turn his fortunes around, Jack plans a Halloween special like no other, unaware he is about to unleash evil.
Yeah, it's the WNUF Halloween special.
America. No, it's the better version. Late Night with the Devil.
Nothing about this is better than anything WNUF. Boo.
Late Night with the Devil for me. I was mildly excited to see it, and then when I saw it, I even wrote a written review about it. But I thought it was incredible, and it's that found footage / documentary style that either works for you or doesn't work for you. For me, it definitely worked. That era of 70s late night television is great, and then the entire story is just fun. And I think that David Dalmatian, he is. You want to talk about right? Arf arf. You want to talk about rising stars, man? Like, he has just come a fucking long way. Like, from being a no-name police officer in The Dark Knight to where he is now. Like, it's great to see, and it's well deserved. But his playing of Jack Delroy is just incredible. Regardless of what you feel about the movie, like, you can't walk away from his performance and say, wow, that was awful. But then even the last act where everything just goes to fucking shit is so supernatural, over the top, demons head splitting into this orb. And it's great. And then this idea that, spoiler alert, it's been out for almost over 6 months now. But this idea that's kind of underlying everything, where he traded his wife's life to get higher ratings, like with this secret cult,
hilarious.
Like, that is just fucking hilarious, but also fucking evil. And like, he's such a likable character on screen, but he did this awful fucking thing. Like, it's every time I watch it, it's so fun. And it makes me laugh. It makes me jump. It makes me wince. Like, that's what you want out of a top 3 horror movie. And so I had to put it on there.
I expected you to have it on there. This is one that did not work for me. We never reviewed it on the show, so I need to make a correction. I said earlier in the show that almost all the movies on these lists we reviewed. You reviewed it in a written review, so you did. We didn't do an episode on that one. We did not do an episode on Oddity, but I totally get why you like that movie, and I appreciated it, just didn't like it. So
sure,
absolutely. Yeah. He is great though. David is great. Yeah. So yeah.
Yeah. So that's number 3.
That's number 3. I can't really say anything else more about it, because we didn't really do a full review. I don't want to make this a review about that movie, and it's been a while since I've watched it. So maybe someday I'll revisit it and we can talk.
Maybe we'll do a retrospective in 10
years.
Yeah.
Maybe. Huge hit for a lot of people. A lot of horror fans really enjoyed it. Good for you. Appreciate it.
Thanks.
My number 3 is a movie you already mentioned. It is Robert Eggers' new film adaptation of Nosferatu. Ooh. Yeah,
made your top 3.
Yeah, top 3. Yeah, I saw it a second time in theaters and really enjoyed it. almost the same amount as the first time, but it just gelled a lot more for me. It's such a spectacle to behold, and like I said a few minutes ago when we were talking about his movies, when you mentioned your pick of the film, you either dive in deep or you don't, and I did on the second viewing. Once I knew what I was in for, I just allowed it to basically bite me in the neck and bring me into its world, and it worked really, really well. Just it's cinema, man. It really is. Anything from the score to the cinematography to the direction to the performances. Unlike you, I thought Lily Rose Depp gave a Oscar-winning performance, or Oscar-worthy, Oscar nomination-worthy. Rather, probably. Right. I'll keep correcting myself.
Oscar nomination winnings.
Oscar nominate Oscar. Well, something to do with that. She's not going to get an Oscar nom, but the Globes are tonight. She's not listed as far as I know. So,
yeah.
But yeah, Willem Dafoe, great cast. It's just the kind of horror movie that you don't get anymore. I think that's a huge reasoning for some of the backlash from people. It's boring, or nothing happens, or maybe it's just a straight adaptation and he didn't want to go super wild and crazy with it. Also, it's not Francis Ford Coppola's Dracula. It's not going to go that crazy. I mean, that movie is what that is. This is his vision of what this should be. I thought it's very Robert Eggers, like you said yourself. So I kind of expected it to be right where it is. It didn't go for the throat in some ways, but it did in others. And when it said succumb to the darkness, he fucking meant that shit, that tagline, man, because you do. The film is just gorgeous to look at, and it is, in its own sense, it really is almost like the silent film. I mean, visually, he captured that, and that's why it has to be in my top 3. I think it needs to be appreciated just for the simple fact that it got made, and it is what it is. It's just, in its purest form, his vision as an artist for the material.
No, I mean, I agree, man. I mean, when this time last year, when we were all looking at, the year ahead for 2024, this falls right where it should, based on who it is, the movie it is, and who's involved. Like, yeah, I mean, totally.
It's still not my favorite movie of his. I think The Lighthouse is still my number 1, probably, but it's right up next to it. Probably, it probably is my number 2 for him. And
yeah,
I do agree with our original sentiment that it could have been sexier, but maybe he just didn't want it to be sexier. There is fucking in it. I mean, have you seen the prosthetic penis that he gifted to Nicholas Hoult?
Yeah, I think it's great.
Yeah,
and no,
I'd find that in my house.
There's fucking in it for sure. I just think that there's, and there's a difference between just fucking and that they're this sexy. And yeah, I said it needs more sex too, but it also needs like this obsession. To me, is was not portrayed the way that would have been more effective for me.
For you. No. I don't disagree with that. And I think Loisos, when he saw the movie, he also projected the same feelings on the matter. But aside from that one piece of the puzzle, I think the rest of it worked so well for me. So my number 3, Nosferatu.
Yeah, great pick, man. Man, I feel nervous going into my top 2.
Oh shit! Well, you just did Late Night with the Devil, so you can't get any worse than that.
I guess not. So my second favorite horror movie of 2024 was surprising for me. At first, but when it came time to make this list, I was like, no, it has to be. It immediately was in the top 3. It was just a matter of, well, how is it gonna order? And it really did almost become my top movie of the year. It's like razor thin margins there,
right?
But it is all about a fading celebrity who takes a black market drug, cell-replicating substance that temporarily creates a younger, better version of herself. That's right, I'm talking about The Substance with Demi Moore, Margaret Qualley, Dennis Quaid. Man, I did not expect to be just as completely infatuated with this movie as I was. And it is so fucking wild, so fucking gory, so hot. Like it's Demi Moore, like has been a sex symbol for multiple decades now, and she still has it.
Yeah, absolutely.
But this is something that you, Justin, you and I can talk about this. Like this, everybody has this at some point in their life. This fear of aging, like this fear of being traded in for a new model. Or
motherfucker, I'm feeling it right now.
right. I've
I'm
been,
looking at you.
you pick out some gray hairs, and it's that like common denominator with everybody.
Yep.
Like this is something everybody's always scared of, and this is the height of insecurity. So who among us wouldn't pick a fucking pill that's like, hey, if you take this, you get to be a better version of yourself, and you can feel beautiful again, blah blah blah. So at a
Well,
very
people
base,
they're taking Ozempic. They're thinking
right,
that's
but
going
so
to
right, so it's there, so it's
yeah, it's a real
and
thing. Yeah.
this is way more drastic than Ozempic. But God, man, the colors in this were great. The transformations were great. I think Demi Moore and Margaret Qualley were a great pair for each other. To be those kind of opposite twins. And it's so fucking Cronenberg that I couldn't help but love it. Like I love Cronenberg, and this body horror was something that we'd seen hints of in other movies throughout the year, but this one embraced it full on. I mean, even you want to talk about body horror, is fucking Dennis Quaid eating the shrimp in that one scene.
It's one of the most disgusting things in any movie. Just the
so fucking
sounds,
gross. And even up to that off the wall bonkers final monstrosity deformity that Demi Moore has created for herself, is jarring and grotesque, but you still feel bad. Like it's almost like a Frankenstein's monster. Like you feel bad for this creation creature. Man, I really can't talk. About
that damn cold medicine, man. You're
that
drunk.
Dimetap. I've been just chugging it through a straw, and up until the end where she even cuts out her face and staples it to her monstrous head. Like it's so fucking good, and it made me leaving the theater, and this is gonna sound like a bad review, but I was like, do I ever want to watch this again? Because it you don't feel good at the end of it. And it's so gross and so like it's not lighthearted at all. Like I just said, the concept of it is
not
super
at all
heavy.
whatsoever. No.
So I'm like, do I really want to watch this again? And I said, and in my head, it's well, yeah, of course I want to watch this again because of everything that I just listed. So if I can get past it being such a heavy fucking movie, and still come out saying that I really want to watch it, like of course it's top 3. So my second movie is The Substance.
Great pick. Absolutely. And you may or may not hear it here shortly. My number 2, and I debated on whether or not I was going to put this on my list because of the genre that it is, but I said earlier, horror adjacent, fine, cool. Was the original horror adjacent? Sure was. So here it is. And it was one of the most anticipated movies of my entire life. I'm talking about Tim Burton's Beetlejuice, yep. Which for me as a fan and as a critic delivered probably better than I ever expected it could. 35 fucking years plus after the original. They made this movie like 3.5 decades after the original film, which is widely considered not only a classic of the 80s, but one of the greatest horror comedies of all time and one of the greatest comedies of all time. It's probably the movie that when Tim Burton passes away will be in the headlines. Beetlejuice director. It'll probably be Beetlejuice and Batman director or one of the two. I had so much writing on this movie, and obviously those that have been listening to the show for a long time know my history with the movie, from driving all throughout the night to visit the
Yep.
sets in East Corinth before they tore them down, to driving all through the night on a separate occasion once the strike ended, and being there for the last day of shooting in Massachusetts. And Brady actually was there with me, meeting Tim Burton, seeing Jenna Ortega stand right next to me, and then us being invited by Warner Brothers to host an advanced screening for the DC viewers here was such a dream come true. So I'm forever thankful and grateful for it. But all those things aside, it is Tim Burton at his purest. Tim Burton is back in a big way after this movie. It felt like he finally just said, I'm going to be myself again, and played in a sandbox. And what we got was one of the most fun movies of his in a very, very long time, and a movie that stands up next to the original and does its own thing. It's not sentimental towards the original, but it still has the same spirit, which is exactly what Tim set out to do. And it has the cast that we all love so much. Catherine O'Hara, which is probably, aside from Michael Keaton back as the ghost with the most, my favorite aspect of the film. She just absolutely knocked it out of the park. So
She was
fucking
so
funny.
good.
Her comedic timing. And Jenna Ortega, sure, I get a lot of people are complaining. Is she ever going to play anything other than like an annoyed teenager? And dude, listen, look at your favorite actors. Look at their roles.
Yep.
I mean, how many times did Clint Eastwood play a fucking cowboy? How many
A
times
lot.
did Arnold play a guy with a machine gun in his hand? You know, I get it. I'd like to see her do other stuff too, but right now she's choosing a career that she wants to choose. And the movie was one of the biggest movies of the year. And it fucking was a huge box office success. And for most fans, I know it kind of was split, not right down the middle, but I'd say 60-40. Most fans enjoyed it, and I'm one of them. It just captured the zaniness and silliness and offbeat, quirky sensibilities that Tim has always shown in his earlier work. And it just felt like he's back, man. You know, and seeing Keaton slip right back into the role after that many years was a dream come true. It didn't feel like that he phoned it in. It just felt like he put on that striped suit, put on the makeup, and there he was. He's Beetlejuice. You know, it didn't seem like it took all that much effort. And of course, Winona Ryder, which I have to say this, we caught some flack for our review, me and Jeremy, for mentioning her being the weakest aspect of the movie. I still think she's really good in the movie. I just think Winona Ryder and with the rest of that cast and her character, it's hard for her to like stand up next to a Catherine O'Hara, a Michael Keaton, you know, even Jenna Ortega in some scenes. So for me, number 2, it has to be Beetlejuice. Some might give me some shit and say, man, you're wearing rose-colored glasses and all that bullshit. Actually, no. If the movie was shit, I would have said it was shit. It would have crushed me for the rest of the year. I legitimately thought it was a fantastic film. So number 2, Beetlejuice.
Hey man, I love that pick for you. I loved Beetlejuice. I actually just rewatched it again the other day for like the third time. Yeah, I mean, and going to your point about the Winona Ryder comment, I wasn't on that episode, but you know,
That's right. You weren't.
You also have to look. It's different now. Like in Beetlejuice, she was like, you know, the second main character. Like she was who you were invested in. She doesn't take on that role in this one. Like sure, you still care about her, you care about all these characters, but you know, Jenna Ortega is her daughter. She's the one who is in peril this time. And Catherine O'Hara is still coming in with these comedic chops, and then of course you have, you know, Michael Keaton as Beetlejuice. So you don't really, she's not serving the same purpose. So of course she's going to be the
It's a
quote, unquote,
family
weaker
dynamic
version.
once again.
Yeah.
You know, instead of having Alec Baldwin and Gina Davis and having their situation at the forefront, we have what's going on with the Dietzes, and you know, they lose Charles in the beginning of the movie, so it's a family dynamic, more of an ensemble thing here.
And also to those people who want to comment about it, you know, go talk about it on your own fucking podcast. Oh, if you don't have a podcast, then shut the fuck up.
Or comment on our shit and tell us we're wrong and give us engagement. I love bumping that algorithm.
We're never wrong. So with that,
here we are.
Number 1.
Ready?
When author Ben Mears comes back to his childhood home.
No way.
I'm just kidding.
Holy shit! I actually thought you were gonna do it. Oh my god.
Oh my god, your face was great. No, I am still much like you said you would have been crushed by the failure of Beetlejuice. I'm still kind of reeling with whatever the fuck we got out of Salem's Lot. No, my number 1 movie of the year has already been mentioned. I'm sure it comes as no surprise to you or most of our listeners.
Sure.
But in pursuit of a serial killer, an FBI agent uncovers a series of occult clues that she must solve to end his terrifying killing spree. Osgood Perkins did not have to go this fucking hard for us, but he did. Micah Monroe was in there. Nicolas Cage, Blair Underwood, Alicia Witt. Like it's firing on all cylinders. And just like I said in the review, and just like I'm going to say now, you know, it's a near perfect film for me. Is it the scariest film of all time? Like some people said it was, or sometimes even build it. No. I don't think it's the scariest film since The Exorcist, but it does what it intends to do, and it does it so fucking well. It's a police procedural. It's a thriller. It's got horrific aspects. It's a cult. Like you're invested in Lee Harker from the get-go. And when you talk about homage versus straight ripoff, like there are parts of this that there's that clear distinction. Like, yes, you're always going to associate a female FBI agent in a thriller like this with, you know, Clarice Starling.
Sure.
But she does enough on her own and becomes her own character that she can kind of shake that off after the first act or so. Also, the message or the question at the heart of this movie that Perkins has said is it ever okay to lie to your children? And that's just such a simple concept because, I don't have kids, but, lying to like a niece or nephew being like, oh yeah, your mom will be back in like 5 minutes, or like, they're like, oh, they ask you some question that you think is, has nothing to do or no bearing on their life, but is it ever okay to do that? And this movie, of course, takes that to a much higher level. But God, it's so fucking good. And this was the only movie this year that I bought on a physical copy of.
Oh, okay.
As
So
soon.
hashtag send a file.
Yeah, hashtag send a file and back up there. Reactivate my letterboxed. But it is.
Corey will be pleased.
It's. I love it, man, and that color palette. I mean, I even bought a fucking shirt from it. From Neon. And I can't get enough of it. And on one hand, I'm super fucking glad we got it, but on the other hand, I'm super fucking upset we're not going to have it again this coming year.
I know what you mean. Yeah.
But that is my number one of 2024, Longlegs. And
Great
I'm
pick.
super excited for the monkey.
I'm very intrigued so far with what I've seen in the trailer and what I've heard about it, early test screenings and stuff like that. But I will hold my true excitement until closer to the release of the film. My number one was already mentioned. It was hard to get through this without having this movie. It had to be number one. The movie affected me in so many ways. And you mentioned at the end of seeing it, do I ever want to watch this again? My reaction was, I can't wait to go see this again. I got to do a press screening of this one, which was like a week and a half, 2 weeks before it came out. I'm talking about Coralie Farge's The Substance, starring Demi Moore, Margaret Qualley, and Dennis Quaid, as Brady already said earlier. The movie goes for the throat. It's unrelenting. It doesn't give a shit, man. It is exactly what it says it wants to be and what it is. And Demi Moore, powerhouse performance. That is one of the biggest reasons why I am watching the Golden Globes. And I watch it every year, but seeing her get nominated, yes, it's not a horror category. The Globes and the Oscars don't have horror categories, but this is probably one, if not her best performance ever. I think she's done a lot of great work. I've loved her as an actress ever since I was a kid, but right here she really shines. And there's so much social commentary in this performance, and she was the perfect person for this role. I couldn't imagine anyone else as Elizabeth Sparkle. And I just loved the aesthetic to the film. I loved the score to it. I loved that, much like we talked about earlier with some other directors' decisions, that it feels almost like a hybrid of a time frame. Yes, there's cell phones, but like, the opening aerobics thing feels very late 80s, early 90s. There's homages to The Shining in, the decor and the build of the building and in certain things. Her apartment is such an iconic image now in my head. It'll forever be there. I just loved this movie. In terms of body horror, like you said, I think what was so amazing about it is so many people going into the movie before it got talked about. And yes, I didn't expect that at the end. I didn't expect that at all. And when you see it, if you're a horror fan, you're giddy. You're like a little kid in a candy store. You're like, oh my God, they're fucking doing this. It's The Fly. It's The Thing. It's Society. It's all these amazing creature body horror things that we loved so much in the 80s that you don't really see as often, in the 2020s. Just not a thing. And it's done so well. It's so grotesque, but yet so beautiful in its own right. Man, that ending, that was it for me. Phenomenal work. It absolutely is not only the best horror movie of the year, it's absolutely one of the best movies of the year. And we may or may not, ladies and gentlemen, type up and post like a graphic or something with our full list of, top 10, including other genres, if you will. We'll see if that happens or not. We did it last year, but this would absolutely be in my top 5 movies of the year. It might even be my number one in general. I mean, that's how much it affected me, how much I enjoyed it, and how brilliant I truly think it is. And it's great to hear from Coralie that there's no sequel planned. This is a one-off. We're not going to make this a big money maker or anything like that. You know, the first movie, The Substance, did make good money. It got talked about a lot. It's got awards buzz, so that is fantastic for the genre. Especially considering, Brady, how many normal Joe Schmoes and general audience moviegoers went to go see it, you know?
Yeah.
78 million on a $17.5 million budget. That is success, man. That is, in a nutshell, it really is. Makes me happy to be not only a horror fan, but a movie fan in general. To see genre like this prosper and blow up and succeed. What a fucking time to be alive, man. But that's it, ladies and gentlemen. That is our top 10 horror of 2024. But we're going to real quick. We're going to mention J-Dog, his list. And we'll start with number 10. Brady, go ahead and start with his number 10. We're going to count down his top 10 of the year.
And he's not here to defend himself, so we can make as many comments as we want.
No, I'm not going to say anything. I promise.
So Jeremy's number 10 is Blink Twice.
Yep.
The Channing Tatum movie or starring movie. Zoe Kravitz was the director.
Yep.
Tells the story of the group of people invited to the private island of a billionaire tech mogul as something strange happens with the attendees.
As number 9 is Strange Darling, which I already mentioned, which I'll never forget him coming onto that movie later on and texting me and being like, that fucking blew me away. So great pick there, man.
Great movie. His number 8 is Beetlejuice.
And another great pick there. Number 7, Frankie Frico, which we didn't cover on the show. And I know it came from the Psycho Gorman director. Didn't get a chance to see that one.
I didn't either, no, but maybe we should check it out now.
Yeah, absolutely.
Number 6, Smile 2.
Fantastic pick. So number 5.
On your list as well, yeah.
Yep, was the Street Trash remake by Ryan Kruger, which I heard some stuff about. He texted me after he watched it and said, you need to watch this shit. I'm not a big fan of the original, but really enjoyed this one. So
I'm a huge fan of the original, so I don't I don't know that this will work for me, but I'll give it a try.
Yeah, might as well.
Number 4 is Long Legs.
Number 3 was The First Omen. Thank you, Jeremy, for locking step with me, baby. Great pick.
Number 2 is The Substance. So definitely, The Substance made all of our top 3s.
Yep. And of course,
what do you think his number 1 is?
Ladies and gentlemen, we'll sit here and wait for you to comment in. No, it's none other than Fede Alvarez's Alien Romulus. If you listen to any episode of this show last year, I swear to God, B. Ratty, he probably mentioned Alien Romulus on every motherfucking single episode. But
he probably did.
Good for that, man. Good for him. I'm so glad that it worked so well for him. And I won't lie, he's not here to speak for himself, but I do remember on the first viewing, he seemed like he didn't know for sure. And on that second viewing, I just saw his eyes, man. They glistened. He was like, it's one of the best Alien movies of all time. And that's all I needed to hear from him. It just made me so happy. So we were both satisfied by a return to form for 2 of our favorite franchises, Beetlejuice, and Alien Romulus, and so many other amazing films this year. So there it is, ladies and gentlemen. Let us know what your favorite horror movies were for 2024 in the comment section on wherever you're seeing this post. If this is your first time listening, thank you so much for joining the Epic Film Guys podcast. If you're a long-term listener, we love you so much. The show is available on every single podcast platform known to man, and we are on every social media platform at Epic Film Guys. We thank you once again for joining us. I'm Justin.
I'm B. Ratty.
And we're looking forward to giving you tons of amazing content in 2025. As long as you keep showing up to listen, we'll keep showing up to talk. We love you guys. Until next time, we like to ask you to keep it creepy.